You are listening to the regular version of Sexy Marriage Radio. smrnation.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Sexy Marriage Radio. Pam, I don't know if you knew this, but the SMR Getaway is next week from the time this is airing.
Well, thank goodness I do know that.
Yeah, you got your plans all laid out and ready to go on getting to Indy?
Yeah, I'm there.
Hopefully
I'm going with you.
You're going to be in the car with me.
I'm looking forward to that.
This is an email that came in from an exchange I had with one of the couples coming that's going to join us there in Indy.
Okay.
And she says she's looking forward to the weekend for sure. It's a funny story. My aunt and uncle and my parents were over yesterday while they were in town. My parents are coming to take care of our children while we're in Indy, and so the topic of the marriage conference came up. Our youngest, who's 10, in the middle of the living room discussion, pipes up and says, "So, Mom, what exactly will you and Dad do at the marriage conference? Just make out the whole time or what?" We all died laughing, and then I said, "Well, yes, but we'll be doing other things too." Thought you guys might enjoy hearing that. See you next week. Love the SMR Nation.
The 10-year-old mind. All you do is make out.
I love the SMR Nation and the fact that we get a chance to have all these kinds of conversations going on in homes, not just on the podcast show that we do every single week. But if you want to let us know what's going on in your world or share funny stories that happen in your world or dinner table or wherever, 214-702-9565. Send us an email at feedback@sexymarriageradio.com, where we answer those that come in as parts of the show. Some are taken care of directly. Some are just added to the queue. But everything is read and helps frame the conversation. So we want your voice to join us because we're all better when everybody's involved. Just like sex. It's better when both people are involved.
Yeah, not everybody, just the two of you.
Absolutely, because the hotbed for sex is the marriage bed.
Check that.
Well, coming up on today's regular free version of Sexy Marriage Radio, we're doing an episode on Cliteracy. I love the terminology.
I like it.
Pam's in favor of Cliteracy
Both
too.
sides getting educated on that is good.
And so what I've done is gone back into the archives and taken 2 episodes with Dr. Lori Mintz. And so for the free version, this is Becoming Cliterate. It's the conversation she and I had about her book, which is a fantastic read. Highly recommend it. And then in the extended content today, which is deeper, longer, and there are no ads, it's an additional conversation she and I had on just don't be illiterate, where we're just getting into what is the most reliable route for female orgasm.
Okay.
And some of the research and the work that she's done, because she's done a lot in this area. And so it's a fun conversation that we had. And this is a fun episode to put both together.
I like it.
So all that's coming up on today's show.
What really stood out to me is the new book she's got out called Becoming Cliterate. And anybody that's going to title a book that straightforward, I'm on board because that is expertly titled. And so Dr. Lori is joining me today. So Lori, it's great to see you and hear you today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So if you wouldn't mind, since Sexy Marriage Nation is going to be introduced to you with this show, tell them a little bit about you just so we kind of get some of the introductions out of the way, and then let's get into making the world more cliterate.
That sounds great to me. So I'm a licensed psychologist in private practice in Gainesville, Florida. I'm also a professor at the University of Florida, where I teach the psychology of human sexuality to about 100 to 200 students a year.
Okay.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it would be.
And yeah, it's really fun to give them science accurate information about sex. And I'm also the author of 2 books. The one that you just mentioned, Becoming Cliterate, Why Orgasm Equality Matters and How to Get It, and A Tired Woman's Guide to Passionate Sex.
Yeah, I haven't picked that one up, but I did finish Becoming Cliterate. And that's where I want to go, because the thing that stood out to me is this whole concept of orgasm inequality. And so I'm curious, how did you land there? What kind of spurred this work?
Well, what spurred this work is both my teaching work and my clinical work.
Okay.
So in teaching psychology of human sexuality, when I teach about female orgasm, it's really hard to teach about female orgasm without mentioning the fact that we have an orgasm gap. And I was also seeing this in my clinical work. And to define the orgasm gap is basically, it's the fact that men are having way more orgasms than women are. So here's just one stat, in one nationally representative U.S. sample, 64% of women versus, I think it was 96% of men. My numbers might be off by 1 or 2 points, but the bottom line is about a 1-to-3 ratio, that men are having significantly more orgasms than women. So I wanted to do sort of a deep dive into why is this happening and how can we change that? And that's what inspired me to write Becoming Cliterate.
Okay. And so this goes down to, if you boil down the idea that the book is proposing, is it's really trying to empower, equip, arm women, and then in turn their partners to help raise that number.
Exactly. It's really written to change what happens in individual bedrooms, but also culture as a whole, which is a sort of a lofty goal, right?
Well, but you're in the world of Sexy Marriage Nation. That's our lofty goal is the same. So.
Right. So I wanted to change culture as a whole and individual bedrooms to make, orgasm isn't the only goal of sex, of course, and people can have satisfying sex without orgasm. But I don't think very, very few people would argue that it is a very pleasurable experience. It enhances closeness and connection. And, if one party is getting 3 times as many of those, we have to ask, why is that and how can we change that?
Right. Okay. And so let's start with the societal view of it, because that's one thing you kind of lay as the foundation that society has taught, in some regards, the man-focused, that's the point of sex, that it's penile-vaginal intercourse only, and that's how you define sex, as opposed to you're coming at it and your lofty goal of, no, sex is more broadly defined. So what do you mean by that?
So, I really appreciate the way that you put that, because that is such an important central premise of the book, is that we define sex as penile-vaginal intercourse, and we have a societal script that says foreplay, just enough to get her ready for intercourse, male ejaculation, sex over. Yep. And even the words we use, sex equals intercourse, foreplay is everything that comes before the main event. And that is so deeply ingrained in our culture, but it causes massive problems because the vast majority of women do not orgasm from intercourse alone. Right. And yet they feel that there's something wrong with them. And men often feel like, this is my job. I'm a real man if I make her orgasm by lasting long, thrusting hard.
Right. By just the penile vaginal route.
Right. And so that is really it's so deeply ingrained. And, yes, we can say, ejaculation, male orgasm has procreation in its favor. But, and I say this in the book, writing way back in the 60s, Masters and Johnson said that doesn't account for the force with which the female orgasm has been sort of negated or considered less important in the whole scenario. Right.
And so go just from the research that you found for the book, when you're talking about the vast majority of women that are unable to orgasm just from penile vaginal intercourse alone, what can you remember those numbers? And just to kind of, because
I sure can.
I assume you could. I know we're right in your wheelhouse with this, but this is one of those that there are so many things that come out there in the tabloid world we're in, and so you could take data. You're a researcher at heart as well, so full well I can take some research and I can pull out it and make it say what I want it to say. So
absolutely.
I've appreciated, I'm sorry to step on you just real quick, but just so my audience understands the thing I loved about your book is you came at it from a science basis. You came at it from, here's credible stuff. Let me give you what the other people say too, so that way we've got the contradictions. But then people can make a choice and a decision based on, here's the data. And so I would love to hear, what's the data for the percentages of women that can orgasm through penile vaginal intercourse alone versus needing to have the clitoris involved?
Yes. And, I'm so glad that you found the book science-based, because that was very important to me, that it all be based on research. And the question that you're raising, what is the percentage, is an area that's really fraught with some contradiction and some confusion, because, and I find this really interesting, the percent depends on how you ask the question itself.
Sure.
So if you ask, how do you orgasm with intercourse? So you're including the idea of intercourse in the question, which we know has all this weight. Women are supposed to do that, right?
Right.
Then about 30% of women say, oh, I can do that, even if they've only done it once or twice.
Okay.
But when you actually specify, how can you orgasm from intercourse alone? Like, you're not getting your clitoris stimulated in some way by the position you're in, or, touching yourself during intercourse or whatever, those numbers decrease. And again, there's variety in how far they decrease. Some don't find they decrease very much, maybe 20%. Others find it goes down to 15%.
Okay.
But then when I ask my students a question, and I've asked this, it's been over 600 to 800 students about over many years, what is your most reliable route to orgasm? So I don't pull for intercourse. I just give them a bunch of choices. 4% say intercourse alone.
Okay.
So
That's
really
huge difference.
Right. So, really it depends on what question you're asking, but
absolutely.
If you're really asking women, what is your most reliable route? Most say some form of clitoral stimulation, whether it's paired with penetration or not, about half and half.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so with that information, and with the Sexy Marriage Nation hearing this, because this is going to speak to a lot of women that have bought into the idea of either I should be able to climax just during penile vaginal intercourse alone, or they realize, okay, it's 30%, so that helps alleviate some. But if they hear, wait, even that could be skewed and high. So that's the point of, how do we involve the clitoris? How do we, as you have aptly and succinctly put it, become clitorate as a nation and as people? To me, I can give you specifics of how we do it in individual bedrooms, and I'd be happy to do that because it involves changing that script. But as what we need to do is do something we've never, ever, ever done in Western history, and that is consider clitoral stimulation equally as important as penetration, as much of the main event as penetration. I say in the book at one point that, if we turned the tables, we might call clitoral stimulation sex and intercourse post-play, if that was the main event. Okay. But I don't think that is a good solution. I don't think we need to turn the tables, because there can't be quality without equality. Right. And to me, quality sex is about equally valuing each individual route to orgasm and holding clitoral stimulation and penetration as equally as important.
Okay. So Pam, our sponsor today is a company that's near and dear to our hearts.
Yes, they are.
HelloFresh, because they've been in our home for many, many months now. And they've taken a lot of the burden and angst that would come around mealtime, more specifically, what are we going to eat, and variety being on display in the Allen household. They've taken that and made it so easy because HelloFresh provides everything we need right at our doorstep.
They've opened up your palate.
They really have. And what's so much fun is we do this all together as we're creating the meals.
Yeah.
Because it comes in, it's all pre-measured. It's exactly what you need. You get to pick from usually around 14 different recipes each week. You pick and select which ones you want that fit. You can add some add-ons like some garlic bread or some extra protein or some desserts even if you want to make it even easier.
Yep.
But what the fun thing is ways come out in our household is oftentimes the party has already begun when you are walking in because the cooking is starting. Kids may be involved.
Yeah, you guys are already chopping up veggies and whatever.
You come join in, and then we have a meal together as a family. And then every single meal, we rate them.
We do.
As a family. And only one for each of the kids has rated below like a 7. And that was just because they didn't like the actual entree, not the taste of it.
It was so good.
They just didn't like what it was we chose that week.
Because they're kids. Most of them are like all 9s and 10s.
Right. So HelloFresh is convenient. It's contact-free delivery right to your door. The recipes are easy to follow. They give you pictures to guide you all along the way. They take the stress out of everything you need to do each and every week to feed your family. With HelloFresh, we are proud to have them as a regular sponsor right now.
So maybe you want to join the party too with your family. So you can do so by going to HelloFresh.com/SMR16 and use the code SMR16 and get up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts.
Wow, that's a deal.
That's right. Take advantage of this opportunity. Go to HelloFresh.com/SMR16. Use our code SMR16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. And so let's do a layman's terms of how do you get the clitoris involved?
Okay.
Because I think that's valuable information. And obviously in your book, you go to great detail of here's how, well done. Because
Thank you.
There are lots of people, and I know a lot of times in my audience or at the Sexy Marriage Radio Getaway or some of the different things that we've done where this is just not talked about. I mean, you're never going to hear a sermon on let's talk about the clitoris at a church. That's just, I can't imagine that we will get there as a society. Although I'd go to that church because they're willing to speak to some things that man, that can really help some people. But it's worth, we got to spend some time going where no men go or no women go sometimes just because it's valuable to know.
Absolutely. Thank you for being willing to go there. And I would go to that church too. So let me know if you hear of it.
I will do it. You'll be on the email list.
Okay. So the chapter you're talking about where I do give kind of a play-by-play, how do you do this? I had a lot of trouble writing that because I had to find a way to do it that wasn't the usual advice. Do this and everyone will orgasm because you have to also honor the fact that every woman's body is different.
Yep.
Every woman's genital nerves are actually positioned a bit differently. So communication is always part of this script, and we can get back to that. But so what I did in the chapter and what I want to do for listeners is basically I use the metaphor of a script. Remember, I talked a minute ago about foreplay, intercourse, ejaculation, sex over. That's like the play. That's the script of the play. And so I basically say, let's change that script. And here's 4 types of scripts, and I can delve into any of them that you like. But, and they're all named after the female orgasm if it's a female reader, the male perspective if you're a male reader. So the first one is she comes first, or you come first, depending on
depending on who's reading.
Right. And so what would that be? That would be, for example, oral sex during which the woman has an orgasm, followed by intercourse where the man has an orgasm, or oral sex turn taking where the woman comes first, or manual finger stimulation of the clitoris and then intercourse. And I'm not sure how your listeners feel, and so I want to talk to them about vibrators.
We have a sponsor that covenant spice. So we're good. Go there.
We're good. Okay, good. So, I mean, people have been using vibrators for centuries, as you probably have talked about. And, they're not a substitute for a partner. They're just a way that many women need that intense stimulation to orgasm. So vibrator or female orgasm followed by intercourse. So basically anything that gives the woman full clitoral stimulation first.
Yep.
And then the next play is she comes second, basically. And that play is the reverse, except there's something very important about this, that a lot of times we have images of rushing into intercourse without enough clitoral stimulation. And if a woman has intercourse before she's aroused enough, it'll actually be painful.
Right.
Because she won't be lubricated enough and her cervix won't pull up out of the way.
Right.
And 30% of women say they've had painful intercourse and not said anything to their partner.
Okay.
Which is a lot.
That confirms the importance of communication that you're alluding to, of how we've got to be better at communicating with each other, but we also got to be better communicating with ourselves of like, wait, I got to face facts that this hurts and I got to say something because I can't just grin and bear. It's not going to help any one of us. No,
that's not a way to enjoy what is supposed to be an enjoyable, connected part of marriage. So, enough clitoral stimulation until the woman is very aroused, and then intercourse during which the man orgasms, and then some way for the woman to orgasm after. Again, manual stimulation, a vibrator, etc. And I can get to the man's role in a minute, because a lot of men will ask, well, what happens to me during all this? How do I stay excited? We can address that in a minute. And then there's the you come together. Mm-hmm. And I do not mean at the same exact time with the simultaneous mythical,
the porn exacerbated. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. That's that myth of the whole. I can't even think of the actual words that would fit it, but it's that concept of some of that's just not even completely realistic.
Exactly. Plus, as some writers say, like how marvelous it is to experience and feel your partner's orgasm, rather than try to time it. Plus, if you're trying to time it, I mean, the reality is like you're going to be more focused on your partner than yourself, which means you're not going to be able to have an orgasm, which requires mindfulness, immersing in the moment. So you come together means during the same act, not necessarily at the same time.
Okay.
And, that act can be something like the old 69, but a lot of people say, well, that's too much going on. It can be mutual touching, or it can be intercourse, but, intercourse in a certain position where the woman is sure to get clitoral stimulation. Mm-hmm. And that can be the woman on top position, but, she can rub her clitoris against the man's penis or pubic bone, but that's not enough stimulation for a lot of women. So having the woman use a vibrator or her hands on herself during intercourse. There's also actually some really interesting couple vibrators. There's a cock ring, a ring the man wears around his penis with an attached clitoral vibrator, so that the woman can actually get clitoral stimulation during intercourse. There's something called the Eva. It's a wearable vibrator. So that's coming at the same time. Okay. And then the final play is it's not necessarily a mainstay of a lot of relationships, but it is an option. And I pointed out it's only you come. Yeah. And only the woman comes. And when people hear that, they're like, that's weird. And I'm like, well, that's what's happening.
That's society. Yeah, that's society speaking in this script that you're talking about. That wait, that's the unicorn.
Exactly. Okay. And I had a writer, write into my Psych Today blog and say, I do this with my wife every Sunday morning. It's a loving and giving experience. I simply stimulate her to orgasm and ask nothing in return. So again, those are different ways to change that script and make make clitoral stimulation just as important as ejaculation.
So tell me how you think of this, because what I've been doing as a trend on Sexy Marriage Radio is trying to help listeners in the Sexy Marriage Nation think of marriage as a long game. That's the beauty and sophistication of it. So therefore, it's not necessarily about the event, it's about the entirety of the events. So if you think of it in terms of, okay, hold on. So I'm going to make Pam, my wife, she's the main attraction today. It's her pleasure in this event. It's all about, that's the play we're going to do. It's her. So I don't get attention, quote unquote, in that play, but so what? This is a long game, because the next day or later that day or later that week, the roles, we could do a different play. And that's the thing I love about the sophistication and elegance and sacredness of marriage is this is a long act communication play.
Absolutely. And I think that it's really important to not misinterpret that I am saying that every encounter, both people have to orgasm,
right? Whether
that's, in general or because you're doing the only you come, event. That you're right, that it is a long haul, and moods change, situations change, people change. And in marriage, you kind of go with those ebbs and flows together over the long haul. But the point is, if in the long haul, one person's orgasms are happening 3 times as many as the others, as consistently, that's really something we need to look at and say, why? Why is that happening?
Yep,
and
that alters everything.
Yep.
Okay.
So I completely agree.
Okay. So how do we then, if you can speak briefly on just finding the clitoris, I think that can be relayed over the audio waves enough, just to kind of give a little bit of a roadmap, because I can think of some of the emails that have come in to feedback@sexymarriageradio.com that talk about, I don't have anything. I don't know. I was not taught, genitalia and a vulva, and the penis. Yeah. Everybody kind of understands that appendage because it's external and, you've seen it. So it's much more complicated than just that. There's other components of it that are very elegant and sophisticated, but a woman's genitalia, that's the forbidden fruit, if you will, sometimes. So walk us through a roadmap just real quick.
Yeah. And it's true. A lot of women don't even know. Mm-hmm. There's a study just, like about 30% of people can't locate the clitoris on a diagram. That would not be true of the penis.
Exactly. Exactly.
So honestly, the clitoris is both an internal and external organ. It's actually way bigger than people realize, but where you're really talking about locating and finding is the external part that is touchable. And basically, if it's, I hate to use this, but it's a good visual since we don't have a picture. I have pictures in the book.
Yep.
People talk about the little man in the boat. So if you think of a canoe, you think of a woman's vulva as a canoe, and there's a little person sitting at the kind of top of it, that would be where the clitoris is. And in fact, what's really interesting is women have internal lips they're called the inner lips and the outer lips, but don't get confused, because the inner lips sometimes stick out from the outer lips. That's very normal, etc. But if a woman would take a mirror and kind of pull her vulva apart, and she would look at those inside lips, which are actually analogous to the head of the male penis, in terms of infant embryo development, and she'd follow those lips up to the top. What happens is those lips meet to form the clitoral hood, which is analogous to the male foreskin.
Right.
And under that hood is a glans, and that's analogous to the tip of the penis. And there's a teeny, teeny little organ, and it's, for most women, it's so jam full of nerves that it's too painful to touch directly. So a lot of people like to stimulate it through the hood that covers it, or from the side, or from the lips. But that's where the clitoris, the external clitoris, is, and how to find it.
Good, because that's information that's worth knowing, because if you're really wanting to get this part of you involved, you got to know where you're heading to have it. And that's the interesting thing, is that the gap from the vaginal opening to the clitoris varies among women. But a lot of times, if you're just doing penile vaginal intercourse alone, you're pretty far away, if you think about it, from the clitoris. So it is difficult to get it involved with quote unquote intercourse.
I'm so glad you brought it up. It's also, there's variation in how far the clitoral hood and glands are from the vaginal opening. And there's really good research that anyone has more than about an inch, it's not close enough to where the action is to be stimulated. And I use a metaphor in the book that's not mine, but I love it. And that is, if intercourse works to stimulate the clitoris indirectly, it's because you're pulling in and out. The lips are moving. You're moving the lips, and by penetration, which is stimulating the clitoris. But if you pull on your ears, it'll move the cheeks.
Yep.
But it's a whole lot easier to just move the cheek directly.
Exactly. If that's your goal, is to get your cheeks moving, pulling your ears isn't necessarily the best way to accomplish it.
Exactly.
Okay. So I guess the last thing I've got on my mind is I've got some emails that have come in from husbands that they want to get access for her pleasure more. She's reluctant. She's not willing. It's happened a couple of times, but it's not a regular occurrence, even though he's a willing participant. And obviously these are skewed, because I don't know how willing he really is. It could just be, I want more warm up so I can be the main attraction. But I'm going to take it as, no, they want access because they want her pleasure. Do you have some thoughts coming from a woman and a scientist in the work that you do that can help a woman realize the role that this can play, how this can enhance their life? How do you overcome the shame or the uncertainty? Can you speak to that for just a little bit as we wrap this up?
Yeah, absolutely. And big shout out to the men who are writing, who want to make it an equal opportunity event. And I take it at face value too. To the women, I'd say the shame of your orgasm, the shame of your sexuality, the shame of clitoral stimulation in our culture is so deeply ingrained. It goes way back to Freud, who said, he started this whole mess.
Way to go, Freud. Yep.
Yeah. When he said the clitoral orgasm is immature, he even said, as when a woman is married and has had sex long enough, she will transfer her clitoral feelings to her vagina. It's like, that's like saying, well, the longer you live, you might be able to eat with your nose instead of your mouth.
Right.
Like, you don't transfer sensitivity of an organ. So to the women, I'd say, like, this is like a lot of things that you have to work on. It's so deeply ingrained in you because you've grown up in this culture that it's okay to acknowledge that, but to move past it too, to educate yourself, like to normalize what you need to enjoy your body. I actually had a client, and this may be really helpful to your listeners. When she learned about the clitoris, she came back to a session and she said, I've been thinking a lot about this. And she said, I think that it's God's gift to me. Yeah. I think the clitoris is God's gift to me, and I am going to therefore use it to the best of my ability in my marriage. And that really helped her to realize it's there for a reason.
Yes.
The clitoris is the only organ in all of human anatomy that is only purpose is pleasure. Yep. The penis is pleasure plus urination,
Right.
The clitoris does nothing but pleasure. So it's a very unique organ, and to give yourself a pep talk that it's there for a reason and learn about it and use it.
Perfect. Yeah, because that. I think that's a message that needs to be heard far and wide. So, Lori, I have to say thank you for joining me with this.
I love the fact that there are all kinds of researchers out there more and more in the world of sex and eroticism and pleasure and the inner workings of our bodies. Mm. Because it's baffling to me, Pam, to look back and think of how ignorant we were as a society, as people.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
And how fabulous to have this avenue to give people a good, safe place to go to listen, to hear, to learn more, and not get stuck in the trash.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this, I'm so thankful that you're doing this, and you have the connections that you're making with people like Lori that just have such great data for the nation to hear.
Yeah, because what we do, I mean, this is the title of the second part of the show today was "Don't be ill-cliterate," because it's such an important thing that there's still times that I come across where people don't recognize that normal penile vaginal intercourse alone isn't usually enough for a woman to reach orgasm. Clitoris has to be involved, and so the more and more times we can shout that from the rooftops or through the podcast airwaves, just to let people know, I think we can help a lot of people discover what sex and marriage can actually become.
Agreed.
Well, this has been Sexy Marriage Radio. If we left something undone, we want to hear it from you. Let us know, 214-702-9565 or feedback at sexymarriageradio.com. So those of you in the nation that might be heading to Indy next week, we'll see you there. Those of you that aren't, you'll be missed. We'll see you next time.